Obviously, the object is to stay alive in realignment expansion, but can the Big 12 do that from a financial standpoint? And is the clock already ticking? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thanks for making this show your first listen every single day. We are joined today by Jeff Fuller. He is the guru when it comes to all things college football viability, financial viability, the EADA rankings that I give you so often. Those come from the research that Jeff Fuller has done. So now we get the horse's mouth on whether or not the Big 12 is in a solid spot financially and can stay alive moving forward as revenue sharing becomes a thing. We'll also talk if the ACC can stay alive when Florida State and Clemson are gone, and how the Big 12 will shake up if the SEC and Big 10 come knocking to steal programs. Jeff, to start it off, generally, is the Big 12 in a spot financially where things look rosy, or is the clock ticking as this whole revenue redistribution ploy looks like it might fall in place?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, Drake. Thanks for having me on. Love talking college football, college sports. Love the Big 12. New member here as a BYU fan, but been following the saga of realignment through various iterations over more than a decade. Seeing who's going to be viable is key. I mean, we're in an environment of, they used to call it realignment. More people are calling it consolidation now. And it's just going to be interesting to see, who survives the consolidation. BYU were like, yeah, we're in the Power Club. And all of a sudden, it's not just a Power 5, it's becoming a Super 2. Who's going to make it in the Super 2? I hear people calling it the Power 2, and that just hurts my heart just because it took BYU so many years of effort of finally getting in the Power Club, and now they're kicking us out again. We'll see what happens.
With that, is the Big 12 at a spot where you feel comfortable? I'm glad that you mentioned there's the Power 2, as people have coined it now. Is the Big 12...
No, it's the Super 2. Don't say Power 2.
Super 2, but
Super 2.
Others who are wrong are calling it the Power 2, which insinuates that those two leagues, and they are, they're building a gap financially. Sure. Is that gap going to become too wide? At what point is the Big 12 not financially viable any longer, or is that something that's on the radar?
I mean, there's different theories, there's different opinions on this. How much money do you need to be financially viable to do what you're going to do? I mean, you've got some teams in the conference in the Big 12 that have been outside of the Power Club and the Power money for decades, for their whole existence, and have found a way to still make it work. You got Cincinnati made the playoff. You've got UCF building they weren't even an FBS program like 30 years ago. They've risen up to a huge enrollment, and alumni base is growing, and they've got all the upward trajectory you can imagine. So if you're asking who can survive, I think it's who wants to survive, who's going to find a way to make it happen. You'll find your donors, you'll find your ways to raise money. Many of the schools in the Big 12, not the remaining 8 that have stuck it through and been there for a while, but the newer 8 programs minus BYU, there's a long history of state support, financial support, subsidies, charging student fees. They've been more creative in swelling their revenues and their budgets, their revenues, by getting this alternative funding. And, they're institutions that are built to exist and keep going. And you've got whole athletic departments, you've got all these jobs. We talk about it as fans, and I go, who's in, who's out, who's going to live, who's going to die. A lot of people's livelihoods and their heart and soul are on the line with these decisions. So they're big decisions, and we'll see who's serious by who allocates the money You could argue that the schools that are coming in from the American and sort of BYU, who aren't used to getting the big money, who aren't built on receiving that money, that they're maybe built a little more to survive in that environment of, not being in the top and still being able to make it work. We'll see what happens to the other programs who are, used to being with the USC and the Oregon, the Texas and the Oklahoma, used to getting a little extra, cash from the power of those programs that they've brought in to the conference distributions. Now that it's, a little more equal playing field, and they're sort of the at least equal, if not, higher value teams within the conference, are they going to bring in as much money and as much value, and are they going to be able to parlay that into a stronger Big 12? Can we all stick this out together as 16 strong teams? Or are we seeing some teams already, I'm just going in the Big 12 as a stopping point until I can jump to the SEC or Big 10. We're seeing some of that from a couple programs. I guess we probably shouldn't name names, but there's been some rumors about, is Kansas on the eye of the SEC, and is that something real? If they want to grow their basketball brands, that makes a lot of sense. So we'll see.
The Kansas conversation is one that I really want to come back to at the end of the show, and their EADA numbers and even their Sportico numbers in revenue over the course of the last decade. You can track last year. It doesn't matter. They're good. They're really good compared to other Big 12 schools. And of all programs, Kansas now being the financial juggernaut in the conference is not something that everybody had on their bingo card, but it's kind of the way this is shaping out. First, I want to go to the ACC and how their financials look and how that conference's stability looks if and when, I'll use Florida State's verbiage, if and when Florida State and Clemson decided to part that league, because as Ross Dellinger wrote this last week, it looks like that is where things are going. That is where we go next on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Look, LinkedIn Talent Solutions has been a godsend for me over the course of the last 2 years because it's helped me hire interns. I don't like doing the daily tweeting things. If you see a good tweet from the Locked On Big 12 account, it's probably because I wasn't the one that tweeted it. It instead came from the intern that I hired from LinkedIn Talent Solutions to help me do the social media thing. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else. Over 70% of LinkedIn users only use LinkedIn to find new jobs. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. They know that small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so they want to make it easy for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Keep in mind that terms and conditions do apply. LinkedIn Talent Solutions is your place to go to find your next great hire. Expansion and realignment financial guru. That's what I've dubbed him. Jeff Fuller on Locked On Big 12 here. Jeff, the ACC without Florida State and Clemson. From a financial standpoint, does it make sense for ESPN to still be involved in 2027 the way they're involved today?
Boy, you hit the nail on the head. You set me up with the question, can the ACC survive without those two programs, the Seminoles and the Clemson Tigers? You got to ask ESPN. They know the numbers. They know if it's viable. They know if they're going to keep paying at that rate. I think ESPN's probably not super happy with the ACC. I mean, the ACC exercised the pro rata clause to get full value payments for Cal, for Stanford, for SMU. Those schools have agreed to take a smaller share, and that was sort of the carrot to the other ACC schools to let them in. Obviously the three schools that voted against it were Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina. There's possibly your answer. Can they survive without Florida State and Clemson? If UNC sticks it out and tries to rally the troops, and ESPN is willing to make it work for them, they may say, hey, we'll keep paying you, but obviously it's going to be a lower payment. You look at the viewership numbers, you look at who goes to games. Football just rules the roost financially, and you're losing two major, national brands, that by far the two biggest football brands in the ACC. If those two are gone, I have a hard time seeing that they would, keep up even with the Big 12 as far as financial payouts and media contracts.
Jeff, as far as your research with EADA numbers in cumulative last 20 years, North Carolina and Clemson both sit outside of the top 30. Clemson at 32, North Carolina at 33, compared to other schools nationally in that revenue, that word revenue. Why are we making them out to be such juggernauts in that conference when the numbers don't put them in the top 25 even?
So, I mean, those are long-term numbers, 20 years. What was Clemson 20 years ago? It wasn't, a multiple-time national champion. They weren't selling out their 80,000 plus. I think it's 86,000 seat stadium.
83, I think, something like that.
83? Yeah. Okay, somewhere in there. So Clemson, and if you look at conference distributions, ACC is going to be way behind, the Big Ten and the SEC. Even the Pac-12 and the Big 12 were getting bigger and better payouts from their conference distributions, from the media packages for years. The ACC has been, has lagged behind. You can look at some of those conference payouts, and the ACC, has been a little behind there. So you stack that up year after year, you're $5 million behind for 10 years in a row, and that's a $50 million difference. And so, you drop down from in the top 25 down to, maybe in the 30s or such. So I wouldn't worry about a 20-year number being truly indicative of your current value to the media partners, to a conference. There's so many other factors. But, you mentioned Kansas. Yeah, Kansas is strong on those numbers. They definitely run a tight financial ship. They make a lot of money in basketball, making some in football now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to the Jayhawks in this process. So the way that I like in Clemson, Jeff, and I'm glad you brought up the fact that 20-year cumulative doesn't tell the 10-year story that's been so prevalent for making Clemson the power they are in the ACC. The reference that I give is 10 years ago, 12 years ago, they were behind in revenue numbers compared to Bowling Green, right? The Clemson football program was just not very profitable until Dabo Swinney started winning. Does that mean that the ACC can lean on someone else becoming a Clemson? I mean, what if we woke up tomorrow and North Carolina State rattles off 2 national championships and 4 college football playoff appearances? Has Clemson proved that any university can do it? I mean, Clemson's in South Carolina, which is college football country. They've, they had a stronger tradition to go back to. They care about football. They've shown that it's their top dog, and that's their baby. I mean, you get the right coach and
Danny
you get the
Ford,
right recruits.
National championship, Danny Ford, the 90s, I think.
Going way back there.
Really taking me back,
Definitely before Tuberville and all the crew there. So, I mean, there used to be a term of, Clemsoning, where, teams would just fall on their face when they were about to, make it, about to win the game, about to break through, and they Clemson that game. They just fall on their faces on the big stage. Yeah. And, Dabo Swinney has removed that term from the lexicon, so to say, just with, proving it on the field, getting the recruits. Can it be done? It can. It's hard to see NC State. It's hard to see, Arizona State. It's hard to see Duke, other places sort of committing to that and to becoming that. But I guess it's possible.
I would, for the Big 12's sake, and I know that a lot of ACC fans hope that it's possible that somebody, and I brought up Kansas State before, who across history, and it sounds dumb to say, but you take out the Snyder era, and what is Kansas State football? Now, obviously, it's omitting 30 years of football, right? So you leave it in there. But even with that, the whole, as we look across the timeline of K-State football, is not spectacular. However, the modern era has shown they can win. And to me, they could be the next Clemson of the Big 12. The Big 12 needs to look to a program like Kansas State or even Kansas now as financially sound as they look to become the juggernaut that wins at the very high level. And with that being said, if Kansas State goes on a 2-3 year national championship vying run, college football playoff every year, do they become appealing to the SEC or the Big Ten? How long until the Big 12 starts seeing its teams poached by larger conferences in what you called consolidation? Let's go there next on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Look, I love playing Monopoly. The only problem with Monopoly is you can't always bring it on the go. What you can do is download Monopoly Go on the App Store or Google Play and bring that on the go. We're going to pause the show for just 1 second so I can tell you about what I've been doing with my friends to not just keep up with them, but also to beat them at something. And that is download Monopoly Go and playing alongside them. They have unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with as well, and hilarious emojis that you can taunt your friends with anytime you heist their vaults or steal their properties. Monopoly Go is a fun way to stay relaxed and laid back with friends that you love dearly. There's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's something fun to discover right now on Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. Download it today. Financial savant Jeff Fuller. Jeff, the idea that Kansas could go to the SEC is one that has popped around a lot over the last week. Greg Pflugar was the original one to bring it up. He didn't say it's going to happen, but he said it could be on the table. Those conversations could be happening. Don't be shocked. And Greg's been right about a lot of things. Are we entering an era where if it's consolidation, not expansion, if the Big Ten and the SEC want to completely take over, they begin to poach Big 12 schools? Have we reached that spot yet?
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the fear of possibly Brett Yormark and the Big 12 as a whole. Do a few programs become so successful that they're too good for the Big 12 and get poached by the Super 2? We'll see. I think there are certain institutions that aren't as attractive, whether it's geographically or based on the nature of who they are, being potentially religious institutions or not major research or flagship universities that maybe are a little less attractive. So maybe it is a good idea for a Kansas State or a Baylor or a BYU who aren't the model of the school that these academic types that make the decisions on who gets added. Maybe these are the teams we want to rise to the top within the Big 12 because they're less likely to get poached. But yeah, I mean, if Kansas with their incredible basketball brand, if they start winning, making a run in the playoff for a couple of years, if they just build up that fan base, even more and build up the revenue and the credibility to going far in the playoff, that really puts them at risk. In any of the new Four Corner ads, if they just start tearing it up in football and become a national power, they've got that research profile, the flagship universities, the big enrollments, and some of the tradition that they're geographically challenged for both conferences to some degree, but less so for the Big Ten with their bridge into the West Coast. But it'll be interesting to see. I'm a fan of Kansas State. I think they have the hardest time. I think they have one of the lower upsides in the Big 12 just because they are a little brother within a relatively small state, population-wise.
Well, you're really firing up those listeners right now. I mean, they are entering the comment section as we speak.
I know. I'm probably offending people right and left.
That's good.
I made Houston mad. And I came out with some fan base ranking on Avid fans earlier today, and Houston fans went ballistic because they were at the bottom of those. And it's the nature of the beast. I try to throw out the data and just speak objectively, and I know some teams get their feelings hurt. Fans get their but that's part of being a fan, right? Law of averages. You're here to bring it. It's here to support your tribe and cheer your team on, and nobody better besmirch them.
Jeff, when it comes to your research, who looks the most appealing right now in the Big 12? I know you do, again, a lot of revenue research. Who is the most appealing if they're going to try to make a move up?
Sure. I mean, Kansas comes to mind just with the basketball brand, the geography that would fit both conferences. They're a flagship university with a medical school, their AAU. So they check a lot of the boxes that, people talk about in realignment. Texas Tech, sleeping giant, possibly, they've got a strong fan base. They actually came out tops in my avid fan calculations for the Big 12. BYU came in second, Kansas came in third. And this is all sports, college sports, yep. Avid fans. So counting basketball, potentially counting, the other smaller sports, if those can add fans. So, yeah, I think Texas Tech, if they're another one that has failed to break through, maybe instead of Clemsoning things, Texas, it'll be Texas Teching things that they've sort of risen up to a point, but have never really broken through to the upper echelon. If they do that, they're positioned well to potentially make a move elsewhere. But we hope we'll all stick together and have a joyous time in the Big 12.
Does there come a point where even in the Big 10, but specifically the Big 12, there is dead weight you cut off? Are there schools where at some point it's no longer financially responsible to still have them in your conference? Will we see that sort of consolidation at any point?
I mean, there's not a wonderful history of it. I think wasn't Temple kicked out of a conference way back when? It's very rare. It's very rare. People usually leave and form a new conference, or it's not like, oh, we're going to kick out one or two members because they're not winning enough on the football field. If that were the case, Vanderbilt would have been out of the SEC years ago, and 100%. Same with Northwestern and Purdue, Rutgers. Why were they even added? They weren't good. Yep. They were added. So yeah, you have to have some teams that lose games. That's going to be interesting going forward with these Super 2 conferences. You're getting all the brands in that are the blue bloods that are used to being at the top. You can't have all those teams at the top of 2 conferences year in and year out. It's going to be harder to win a conference championship when you have USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington in the Big 10. Yeah. Our teams that are used to winning those championships going to get a little restless and say, this isn't what I thought it'd be. We're losing four games a year when we're used to losing 2, and we're missing the playoff, and this, and we're traveling all over the country, and It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out when the rubber hits the road, because I think there's a lot of people that say, hey, we're in this awesome club, but I'm not sure it's going to play out like they're thinking and hoping it will.
Jeff, I'll leave you with this. What is the best case scenario for the Big 12 in the next 5 years? And is it certainly moving east with assorted ACC members?
Sure. I mean, best case scenario, BYU wins, 5 national championships, but the Super 2 still don't want us because we're a weird religious institution. Yeah. So the Big 12, hey, we could have a national juggernaut in BYU. Best case scenario. I mean, you hate to be the vultures waiting to pick over the carcass, but if you have the ACC, if North Carolina decides to team up with Clemson and Florida State, and they are off to greener pastures, there are some good brands to pick up. Louisville comes to mind. NC State, if they don't join along. Someone created a guy named Wild Ute, who's a good friend on YouTube. He created this term called the Wolfpack Backpack, where they're they might get taken along with UNC wherever they go by law. So they may luck into it. But yeah, I mean there's some potentially great brands to pick up. I don't really see the Dukes and the Virginias, sort of the academic elites, wanting to, join on with the unwashed masses academically of the Big 12 relatively. But I mean, potentially NC State, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and Louisville. Those are some that make a lot of sense and bring back some rivalries, and should be interesting. And I'd love to have those teams in, strengthen the Big 12, and a little bit of insurance policy if some of the other brands get picked off.
Jeff, if folks want to find more of the research that you have done, where can they go?
Yeah, so pretty much my Twitter, JJFuller72. Also, I do a little writing for ESPN 960. I was on Ben Criddle's show today talking. I go on there every couple of weeks and just talk about some of the stuff I've been researching. And one of the recent things I've talked about is looking at ticket sales data, and Kansas leads the Big 12 in public data. BYU actually, they've released some of their donor reports, and BYU probably is earning the most money from ticket sales of anyone in the Big 12 right now, including the Four Corner schools that are coming in. Colorado may challenge that with Dion there, but we'll see. But yeah, look me up on that website or on Twitter, and we'll keep it rolling.
That is Jeff Fuller, the financial savant of Locked On Big 12. There's so many monikers we've come up with already today.
I'm going to put that in my Twitter profile.
That's good. That's Jeff. Go follow, again, JJFuller72 on Twitter for more of the best Big 12 specific. I'm going to call it Big 12 specific because many of them are financial reports. This has been and it always will be. Come back tomorrow as we continue to talk, not just expansion, but transfer portal that has kicked up in football and killed a couple of programs that aren't in our conference. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose grande. All right, we're out. Huge.